has to do with, of course, you live by violence, then you're going to die by violence. So if kill, then you're going to get killed. What goes around comes around. Um, it also has to do with the idea of justice. That if you use the sword wrongly, uh, unlawfully, that you will be executed or put to death by the sword. About the sword is life and death. So it's a contemplation of of death as a warrior. Basically, your job, you go each day, is to go and die.
Everybody, welcome to Live by the Sword podcast, starring Grandmaster Taejoon Lee and Ferny Ceballos. This is our first episode. As you will see, we do have some insightful, important, and ultimately maybe even deep messages for some of you, depending on the topics we discuss. Um, First, I want to introduce my mentor, Grandmaster Taejoon Lee, and share a little bit about him because it kind of blends in with my story. And so, Grandmaster Taejoon Lee is eighth Dan Grandmaster in the art of Hwarang Do. It's an ancient martial art that originated 2,000 years ago. The skills did, and the formalized version of the martial art was founded by his father, Grandmaster Doctor or Supreme Grandmaster Dr. Jubang Lee, over now 70 years. So an incredible legacy there. And Grandmaster Taejoon Lee is my mentor. I met him back in 2006 when I was invited to train at his studio by a friend and at the time business partner. And that workout completely kicked my butt. It obviously it made me realize that one, I was out of shape, but two, that I needed accountability. And it's one thing to be, we'll be talking about subjects related to self-discipline and accountability and honor and ethics, but sometimes people in life need to, if they can't hold themselves accountable, they find a mentor that can hold them accountable. And that's exactly what happened with my training, my health, and ultimately my martial skills. But more than martial skill, what I got, which I didn't expect, was the personal growth, the personal development. At the time, I was growing a business, and what I had the opportunity to do through martial training is apply a lot of what I was learning in the martial arts to how to approach my business and think about my business. And ultimately, I became successful through that venture. And I'm gonna let Grandmaster Lee share more about his background and history of not only Hwarang Do but his own personal history. But that's where my journey started with Grandmaster Lee. And when he asked me to, if we wanted to do a podcast together, my first thought was like, absolutely. And actually, where my mind went was the countless conversations that Grandmaster Lee and I had, whether we were at the studio, we were at a bar, at a restaurant, out, out and about. And I learned so much from those conversations. There was so much insight, and I'm sure Grandmaster Lee learned from those conversations as well. And I always wondered, what if we had recorded those conversations? What value might have we've been able to share with the world? And that's essentially what this podcast is. It's a conversation with not only my mentor, not only a grandmaster of a great martial art, but it's going to be a conversation about life and about lessons that we've both learned through my journey as an entrepreneur, his journey as a teacher and mentor to thousands across the world. And so without further ado, Grandmaster Lee, it's my honor to be here. It's my honor to be doing the show, the podcast with you. And I hope finally, after over, almost 15 years of us, communicating, that some of our conversations and insights can finally be shared with everybody else.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Do you go by Fernando or Fernie now?
Oh, Ferny.
Fernie, okay. Uh, yeah. So of course, I've been teaching now for a lot of years. It's over 40 years now. Um, and with you, Fernie, what is this? 20 years?
Yeah. Well, no, it's 2006, so 15 years.
15 years? That's it. It seems like more.
Yeah.
um, no, so I've been teaching a lot, and the lessons, of course, that we teach, that I teach, is a traditional, ancient warrior art. And I don't we can get into more of that as we go, but people should already know to some extent. But um, our history of this martial art goes back a long ways. And the Hwarang warriors, the Hwarang Knights, were the first to unify the Korean Peninsula for the first time in its history. And the warriors who did that were teenagers, ranging from 13 to 15-year old. Um, so, in its core is the warrior ethos, the code of ethics, the creed that they created, that gave them that bond and strength together, where these young teenagers, and of course, it was the smallest kingdom, and they were the underdog, and they were able to go ahead and conquer the two larger uh, kingdoms. And that was all possible because of the strength of the leadership. And as our mission statement states, that Hwarang Do, it's a legacy of loyalty. Um, and so, at its core is the creed, is the ideals, the ethos that bonds uh, these young men together, that gave them uh, united a strong force to reckon with. Now, through that, of course, Hwarangdo's evolved into a very comprehensive martial arts system, because it's built on a philosophy of having balance between oppositions, and with harmony with all different aspects of human growth. So, in the beginning, you have to understand that martial art is not categorized as it is today. It is just what the warriors trained. So, as the warriorship, there was as the modern age came about, and now there was no need for this warriorship or this type of fighting after the coming of technology of guns and the modern weaponry. um, so all the warrior arts have died out, and it's preserved as in the modern era as different styles or forms of martial arts. Um, so technically, since it's a warrior art, it's very complex and comprehensive, because it deals with all forms of combat and fighting. But at it, essentially, since we don't war and engage in battles anymore, we live today as civilians, as people who are normal people, everyday people. And uh, and my efforts has been in the last 40 years, how we can use this martial discipline to better enrich, to better enhance and improve the well-being of 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 each individual, uh, in order to improve their lives, and hopefully hence they can benefit the world in a positive way. So my father has founded this art, and so I happen to be the heir, um, and as the heir, I have to carry and bear this legacy and pass it to the next generation. So with that in mind, um, I wanted to make available these ideas that have benefited many people, uh, including myself, uh, and wanted to share it to the general public in the best way possible. So here's the podcast. And when I decided to wanted to do this, the first person that I considered was you, Bernie. So you know, this is Ferny's some background on Ferny. I don't know what you went to MIT. You went to MIT. I don't know
Mhm.
what you major in MIT. I know then after that you went to USC for electrical engineering, right?
Correct. Yeah, yeah. I studied electrical engineering and computer science at MIT.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at USC you got a master's in electrical engineering.
Yeah, I got my master's in electrical engineering, and halfway through that, it's funny, I was getting straight A's in USC, and then when as soon as I started my business, like, my grades started dropping, because I realized, "Okay, maybe this is not the direction I wanted to go," but I still wanted to finish, and so
Yeah.
that's what I got my degree in.
USC is also my alma mater, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, it's my undergrad.
Yes, sir. Yeah. It's funny, I attended USC virtually, so, all the campus life, the clubs, and friends there were very few for me because it was all virtual because I was working at the time.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, and also now, surprisingly, uh, Fernie is not doing electrical engineering or in that field, but he's has a very successful company in internet marketing.
Mhm.
And he's a very likable person. And um, and he's a critical thinker. We've had very good conversations, and he has been a good devil's advocate in many of the discussions we've had. So I thought it would be perfect to have Fernie host um, the podcast, and hopefully we can then um, discuss more effectively and in depth uh, the concepts in Hwarang Do, and what and basically what I am wanting to add to all this is that it's a unique position in the modern age to have been born into a martial art culture. One of the main reasons why my father had me is so that he could have an heir to carry on. So all of my life, I was born into it. So I was raised in that way to lead Hwarang Do in the next generation. So my upbringing is probably much different than many people, and I have been teaching since I was a teenager. That's basically all that my single job that I've done all of my life. And now in my late 50s, I'm still continuing on. So it is sharing the perspective of the world, the current events and issues from the perspective of uh, 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 a person that has been raised in a warrior legacy. So hopefully, we can
Yep.
hopefully give you better insight into that.
Would you mind, because I think, some people might be asking about, uh, or the title of this podcast, "Live by the Sword,"
Yeah,
in the context of what everything you shared, and then beyond, because I know there's a multifaceted, meaning and perspective that one can take on the name. So I just wanted you to share,
yeah,
how come "Live by the Sword" and not the Hwarang Do podcast or the Hwarang
yeah.
podcast or something like that?
Well, we went through actually a long time to come up with a name, you know. And I just wanted to just make it Hwarang, just use the name, but people have difficulty pronouncing it, and we want it to be accessible to the general public. So we try to come up with a term that's more, easy to remember. So we actually first thought of walking with death, and and although that's good and the meaning, is similar, um, with the death component of it, it seemed a little, what do you say,
Dark.
uh, yeah, a little dark and so forth. So uh, I I thought through it some more. We went back and forth many times, you know, and uh, and we thought of many different names and also one that's not taken. Um, and and I thought of, and actually, I'm a newly follower of Christ, and that happened to me when I turned 50, um, and reading the Bible, and also because of I was having difficulty, I actually prayed. I prayed, I had an in-depth prayer session, and asked to reveal some give me an answer because I was struggling. And and actually, as I was cleaning, and this was on my mind, um, you know, it rang in my head. Um, Live by the sword, die by the sword, and you know where that comes from. That comes from the time when the uh, the the guards with the Pharisees, they come to go ahead and arrest Christ, and one of his followers pulls out a sword and cuts off a ear of one of the guards to the Pharisees, and in doing that, Christ says, if you take up the sword, that you're going to die by the sword, and so that's where that term comes from. Um, so that idea has to do with, of course, you live by violence, then you're going to die by violence. So if kill, then you're going to get killed. What goes around comes around. Um, it also has to do with the idea of justice. That if you use the sword wrongly, uh, unlawfully, that you will be executed or put to death by the sword. So it has also a meaning of justice or fairness. The the thing also for me, which is all very appropriate, but what also the thing that struck me and is valuable to Hwarang and to me is we as martial artists train every day to uh, effectively, how do we most effectively hurt, injure, maim, kill another person? I mean, that's what martial artists do, right?
Hmm.
I mean, that's, we're just trying to find the best way to do those things. And in doing so, there's fringe benefits: health, mental clarity, all the concentration, focus, all those things. But essentially, that's what we do every day. And we use weaponry, empty hand, every which way. But we never engage in fighting. We never fight. Um, we do in sport application to maintain our competitiveness, but we are not hired warriors or bodyguards or protectors. I mean, which actually that we do have a component, and we have taught, as very important military figure, um, Michael Ichenis, which actually he is one of the first persons. He's considered like the father of the hand-to-hand combatives for the elite military in the United States, and he was a student of my father. Um, so in that way, yes, we have that component, but the majority of us, we don't. We don't engage in fighting. We're not professional fighters. Uh, we don't use actually what we learn. And so then why do we do it? Why do it? And we do it for self-defense. But how often are you attacked? Hopefully, in your entire lifetime, you're never attacked. Okay, and never have to deal with a violent altercation. So when do we ever use it? When do we ever use the sword? Every one of our students, every instructor, we all have a sword, but we don't use it, but we keep it. And what is essential to us then is uh, when we say live by the sword, is living with the philosophy, the morality, the concepts that is embedded in being a warrior. Which one of them is about the sword is life and death. So it's the contemplation of death as a warrior. Basically, your job, you go each day, is to go and die. At the end of the day, if you come home, it's a good day. And so it is in that way to treat each day as it is your last day. And if so, how should we look at life? How should we look at the way we conduct ourselves, the way we conduct ourselves with others? Um, and so, based on those ideas, then it formulates our entire worldview and our sense of morality, what is right, wrong, and what we should and should not do. So, in that way, it's powerful and impactful to live by the sword, and hopefully not die by the sword, because we're not actually using the sword. So, in for us, it's not literal; it's more figurative, or symbolic.
What also for especially for me as I, trained uh, with you and ultimately my skills, elevated. I, winning tournaments, getting a black belt, all of that just made me actually more cautious of getting into an altercation. It made me more aware of what I didn't know. It made me aware of how much better other people are, even in Hwarang Do and outside of Hwarang Do. And you just never know. Like, and so, if I've been in one altercation my entire life, and it was for self-defense, and that was it. And because I don't seek it out. I don't want to seek it out. And I it what it also gives me is clarity when sensing a threat, the calmness that goes over me and kind of things go in slow motion, that comes as a result of training. And so the idea of living by the sword, it's like you understand that engaging in combat can mean, the end of you. Therefore, you're more cautious, and
Yeah,
therefore you respect the skills, and you also
right.
respect what you don't know.
Yeah,
And so there's just so much meaning by live by the sword, and
yeah,
therefore I don't pick up the sword unless I absolutely have to.
yeah. Well, you have to understand that actually, the people that fight a lot, and for those of us, when we get in fights, and usually those are when in our youth, um, and uh, you're looking for a fight. There's insecurities. It's a way of needing, desiring to prove yourself. So, um, and people have to go through that process. It's dealing with fear, right? Um, but when you have overcome that fear, you are more confident and empowered, and you know that you're able to handle yourself, and you don't have this sense of curiosity or this insecurity. Can I, is it possible? And prove to others that you're actually strong, because inside you're insecure, you're weak, and you need to prove to yourself, to others, that yeah, you're strong. And that kind of person, that stage in our lives, you're looking for fights. Um, and uh, in fact, that's why the idea of live by the sword, that idea what you're just talking about, is is essentially overcoming our primal fear. And primal fear is fear of death. That is above all fear. So, I say in order to truly live, you have to accept dying. You have to embrace death in order to live. So, living, being afraid of an altercation, living, being afraid of dying, or being afraid of being attacked, you contract. And all of your actions, everything you do, and the way you see the world will completely change. And and although you think you're free, that's the worst kind of imprisonment. Um, so the power of martial arts training is that it helps you to overcome primal fear. So if you're afraid, if you get over the fear of injury, fear of death to yourself, to others, uh, and you're confident about that, surely, then yeah, things all change. All your guard comes down. You're able to be much more clear because now you're calm. You're not excitable. And right, because you joined with a friend, and he's kind of the opposite of you, but he's a very aggressive person, right? And by nature, he's looking for fights, and he needs to be outwardly, strong, prove to himself and others how strong he is, you know, and uh, and that kind of person, uh, it, the I was just, the true benefit, right, and the true lesson of martial art training and all that we do is actually the lesson of humility.
Hmm.
It's humility, right? But you cannot be humble. It's different. It's to be quiet, subdued, submissive because you're a weak person and you don't have a choice, okay? Because you're living in fear. That's not humility. You see, humility is having the power, knowing you're confident and you're strong enough, right? But you choose, it's a choice. You choose to surrender or be submissive, okay? You choose. You realize the fight is not worth it because at the end of the day, you both lose. You hurt someone, you lose. The person you hurt, you lose. You hurt somebody else, you lose. Um, so unless you're a sociopath and you're psychotic, you can't take pleasure in that, right? So if you take pleasure in hurting other people, there's a big problem there,
Yeah.
right? And many people do martial arts for that reason. Surely in Hwarang Do, the way of the flowering nights, and especially under my teaching and my direction and my leadership, that doesn't happen. Those kind of people leave, pretty quickly, right? You witnessed that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the it's almost a dichotomy because uh, it makes you stronger, more capable of being able to, like, say, do well in those type of violent situations, but it also makes you not want to less and less engage in that because it just humbles you.
Yeah,
You never, not only do you never know what skills somebody else might have, but there's also just dumb luck. People can get a lucky punch, and so it makes me humble in that way. But also, speaking of the term "walking with death," I really like that title, and the reason I like that title is because, just like a warrior going to battle, they accept that they will, not that they might die, they will die. It's like they almost accept it as a fact,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
that helps to quell or even just remove the fear, because if they've already accepted it, they go in with a clear mind.
Yeah,
And the irony is that that actually increases their likelihood of survival.
absolutely, absolutely.
And because they come in with that clear mind, that fear is minimized or eliminated. And that's essentially what we empower people to do, should they ever have to defend themselves, they're equipped to be able to control or even
Right.
set that fear aside,
Yeah.
so that they have clear minds, so they increase their likelihood of a
Yeah.
positive outcome.
Yeah.
But we also minimize the number of times that would ever happen in your
Yeah.
life as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but you don't have to be a martial artist to know that death is imminent. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, actually, it applies to everybody. Everybody's going to die.
Right.
There's no one that's not going to die. Okay? So in fact, the idea that and all your efforts to desiring and wanting to live longer and thinking somehow you have control over when you die and how long you're going to live, that is actually a delusion. See, that's actually not being in touch with reality.
Right.
The reality is you're going to die, and you have absolutely no control. That is the reality. Think about it, right? So most of us, though, we don't think like that. I mean, who plans to go and die? Somebody steps out of their house and goes for a walk and gets run over by a car. You drive in your car every day, and you don't think anything about, oh yeah, I'm going to die. You have a higher chance of driving in a car and dying than actually doing a sparring match in our class.
Hmm.
You know, but that reality doesn't set in. Okay, and that's why a person is able to drive their car fine, but when they are told that they need to go in and match in a sparring match with all kinds of armor, okay, that's completely protected and they're not going to get hurt, they they won't, or they become afraid and they're unable to. It's the immediacy, you see, it's the immediacy of potential injury, and so it's perception, right? So if you can control that perception, and then if you can accept the worst case outcome, right, then that's when you can relax and be calm. Um, so you know it has to do then, of course, then having the ability, when you're able to think clearly, then you can use your rational thought and reason properly. And what you have to reason is, what is the thing that I can control and what's out of my control, right? So controlling death, right, or trying to live longer or more is actually nothing you can control. What you have control is what you do right now at this moment. That's the only thing you have control over, right? That's the only thing. Like what I'm going to do right now, right, in this moment. Okay. And so many of us also think about it, right? Uh, I mean, you got these long-term plans, right? Long-term goals, right? So you want to achieve them. You always making this excuse. When I achieve a certain level of status, when I've acquired certain financial stability, when I get married, when right, when I get a raise or promotion, you set all these things as a condition for you to take action. Many of us, you have all these plans, and then you find out you have cancer, you're going to die in a month. I mean, uh, um, plans and all those things are good, uh, but uh, what the essential question has to be is, okay, you want those things in the future, and then the question is not what I uh, cannot or not going to do until I get there. The question has to be, what am I going to do today to achieve whatever it is. And if you think this way also, your goals will change. See, when you look at time in a different way, your life in a different way, where I'm going to live a long time, your goals are going to change, right? When you live like, okay, I might die today, right? I don't have control over when I'm going to die. Then your long-term goals also will change, and you actually have fewer of them. Because you're going to be busy trying to make the best of what you have today. And that is really the essence, no? You have to appreciate many of the dissatisfaction or unhappiness comes from dissatisfaction of what you have. And that dissatisfaction takes place because you're comparing yourself to other people and the potential of the things that you're going to get in the future, right? And you heard me say
Mhm.
this all the time, right? Tomorrow is a fantasy, and the past is the past. The only thing you have the present. There's all kinds of memes and sayings about the present, right? That's why it's a gift. It's a gift,
Right.
and you gotta appreciate that. But you gotta really look into that. And as a warrior, right, or to live by the sword is that thinking. Let me give you an example, and this is why also you have to be careful, right? I don't know if you remember. Do you remember going to the Midwest tournament?
Hmm.
And there was this one guy who had his hand all bandaged up. There's one guy, and he couldn't compete or do anything, and he had all his hand wrapped up. And so I asked him, "How did you do that? How do you think he did that?" Huh? He just got a live blade, right? A sharp blade sword, live blade sword, and he had it in his. I think he's a college student, or just graduated, and he had it hanging in the wall. And some friends came over, and he wanted to show off, so he went up to take the sword, right? And okay, he took it and he held it by the scabbard and the handle, and it slipped out. In his other hand, he tried to catch the blade, the sword, from falling, and it grabbed the blade and it cut his hand. Almost lost his whole fingers and everything. Right? You see, this is the the mindset. So we've also thought about doing this podcast. We talked about the Marshmallow Fortress, right? Uh,
Hmm.
because my saying also is you can't build a fortress out of marshmallows, and that was good and it's catchy, but it took away from the seriousness of what I wanted, to be, right? This is a serious matter. And so, see, the problem with him was his state of mind, you see, right? He wanted to show off. He wanted to, so he's not thinking warrior, being cautious, that that sword symbolizes life and death, right? In that moment, it was his new toy,
Hmm.
right? And he was sharing his toy with his friends. And then what happened? See, he got a reality check. That's a huge reality check. See, every time, this is what I tell people when I even teach self defense, right? First thing I tell them, if, if the first thing before you engage, before you resist, okay, is you have to accept the possibility that in the process, you might kill the other person or you'll die in the process. Unless you're able to accept that, don't engage, submit, comply. See? Because you can't start the resistance and then back off and go, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. Okay. You can't do that. So uh, that is what it means. You see, the idea of uh, live by the blade, or in that way, every decision you make, everything you choose to do, what am I saying? Before you engage, accept the worst case scenario. accept the worst case scenario. Then it's not a gamble. It's not a gamble. You go to Vegas, you go to Vegas, you do your conferences in Vegas, right? No Excuse Summit. If you guys, I mean, it's a huge internet marketing. You guys been going at what now? How many years?
Since 2010.
2000.
Yeah.
Wow, and was it 11, 12 years now?
Yep.
So, so uh, when you see that's the point, right? When you go there to Vegas and you take your money, whatever it is, $100, 500,000, whatever you take, and you're going, I'm going to go make money. I'm going to gamble, make money. You'll be most people will be horribly disappointed, you know, and will lose everything, become suicidal and regret. But if you take the money, 200 or 5 or whatever you can afford, and this is all I can afford, and you're going to go to spend it, right? Not to make money, but you're going to have a good time, then your perception changes. I'm going to lose it, right? I actually done that a few times and won some money. you know, but that's a blessing, right? But expecting that you're going to make it, it's right. And gambling is gambling. The odds are highly against you. So think about our human mind, right? Right? Okay. And this is why many of the, in my opinion, the motivational speakers, many of the memes, and all these, the people, um, it's sometimes problematic. Or raising children or teaching children. Oh yeah, you can do anything you want. You can be whatever you want. Is that true? Is it true? No, it's not. It's not. Why are you lying to them? Well, the idea is that you don't want to limit them, right? You want them to engage. You want them to try to do, and you don't want to say no. You can't do anything. You can't be anything. That's wrong too. Also, right? But to say to somebody you can do anything you want, that's a falsity. That's not true. What has to happen, you can do what you want when you choose what you want, and what it's going to require is that you work hard and you don't give up, that you need persistence, you need tenacity, you need self-discipline. So yes, with all these things you can get there. See? But those things are rarely said, right? Right. I mean,
Well, I think the idea is that um, you focus on what they want to be, but it only works if you're teaching them so that they can also be disciplined, hardworking.
yeah,
So you're
absolutely. And
if you're teaching them those things, then when you say you can be anything, then there it is true. But if you're just saying you can be anything, but you're not instilling these values in them, then it's not going to work.
yeah, yeah, but see, that's the problem, right? That's the problem. Many of the parenting, many of the coaching, many of the teachers, whatever, they don't do that. They're saying
Right.
that to make people feel good, and to sell a product, or hang them up, and then that's it, and that's the problem, right? Absolutely. It's just like, you can tell somebody, yeah, 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 go and fight, and you can go ahead and win. You taught him nothing. He has no skill, and said, yeah, go in there. That's highly irresponsible, right? To do that, and he's going to go ahead and lose. The better way is, you're going to go in there, and yes, you might lose. Well, what do I tell people when they go to tournament? Do I tell them you're going to win? No. I tell them what's important is you go in there and you stand 2 minutes, whatever it is, and you stand your ground. And if you did, then you've won, right? You do your best, and you don't cower, you don't fear, and you stand there courageously, and you last through the 2 minutes, and you do your best. Then you won, right? That is, you see, then of course, with that, then your job, if you're a teacher, parent, or mentor, whoever it is, you have to then equip them to see if they can win. But even if you did, promising them a victory, promising them of winning, never getting hurt or whatever it is, that's falsity. That's a lie. That's a lie, right? That's not the truth. What my entire point, whenever I teach and whenever, is you have to teach people to deal with the truth.
Yeah.
You can't soften it up, right? Yes, this is the reality. This is the same thing, right? And many people, when I teach the self-defense class, and I tell everybody in the very beginning, yeah, you have to accept death before engaging. A lot of, you know, some of the ladies there and whatever, they're like they're turned off, right? They're like, what's he talking about? They just wanted to learn some exercise and learn some techniques, so they can uh, defend them. And then also, what I tell them, right? Right? I tell them, just coming to the seminar here, okay, it's not going to help you. Just this one session is not going to help you, okay? And what is the saying that I use, right? It's in the military the same, right? The military, they use it. They know enough hand-to-hand combat they know just enough hand-to-hand combat to get themselves killed. You know, so the see, this is the issue. The issue is, yes, see, and if you tell them you come and you learn from me and you can defend yourself, and then they think, oh yeah, I can. The reality is, when they're with somebody and they're stronger, more powerful, and they start thinking that they know a few techniques and they start doing, they get overpowered. Now what? And it doesn't work. Now what? Okay, you kicked them in the groin. They blocked it. Okay, now what? Elbow them in the face, but you missed. Now what? Right? That doesn't save you. That doesn't save you. What saves you is your frame of mind, your mindset, and your internal spirit, your soul, right? Your entire makeup, your emotional stability, your emotional control. How badly do you want to live, right? And your desire to fight to the end, no matter what, that is going to help you survive. Now, with that, and a few things, now it will help you.
Mhm.
You see? So what I try to do, what Hwarang Do tries to do, what we try to do, we're not trying to teach you a few fancy techniques for self-defense to get you out of trouble. We're cultivating the warrior spirit, the warrior mentality, right? The desire never to give up, never to quit, right? To endure hardship, endure suffering, pain, to get up, not second, third, fourth time, to get up the 1,000th time, right? That is what we're trying to. That's what's essential. And martial arts training, right? It is perfect to develop that type of resilience and tenacity, and that sense of spirit, desire to persevere.
And that's exactly what it did for me. Uh, because I wasn't a naturally an aggressive person. Was
I
yeah.
hope. I hope.
Well, but I'm not. Even though I was bigger than, growing up, I was bigger than most of the kids, but I was not the bully. I was the bullied.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was easily picked on because I
yeah,
was timid. I
yeah,
didn't want to engage in altercation. I was afraid of getting in trouble. I was afraid of, you know, upsetting my parents or upsetting teachers or whatever. And
yeah,
so that was, that's how I approached relationships. That's how I approached
yeah,
both romantic but also even just friendships. And what training in martial arts allowed me to do is it it trained me on how to be aggressive or assertive when I needed to. and I can turn it on and off. And now it gave me that control. I still wanted to be kind and gentle and those things. But if the situation required something else, I now had the ability to turn it on
Yeah.
and be assertive.
Yeah.
And it also toughened me.
Yeah.
It's a way of dealing with adversity and,
Yeah.
pain and
Yeah.
suffering in a
Yeah.
controlled environment where you're not gonna likely gonna get hurt,
Yeah.
so that you can better deal with it in life, you can better deal with it in business.
Absolutely.
And so many of my clients that come in, especially if they've never been an entrepreneur before and they wanna learn how,
Yeah.
they come in lacking that, resilience,
Yeah.
lacking that that muscle of discipline and
Yeah.
fortitude and everything you just mentioned. And
Yeah.
so that's actually what I need to work with them on before we can get to the
Yeah.
marketing or the business stuff.
Absolutely.
But I kind of, no one taught me that in business. I got that from, training in what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. See, but that this is what I'm saying, and that's why what we're dealing with are foundational things. This is what you have to cultivate, but you have to do something in order to develop that, right? So there's not just you can't just tell people to be resilient,
Right.
persevere, you know, endure, right? Develop endurance, stamina, spirit. Okay, you can't do that. You have to confront them with challenges, with some other challenge, external challenge that they have to overcome, struggle, solve, and by doing that is how they develop. So martial arts training is is the best way, because every day when you go to class and right, uh, and you never thought you're going to do it, and you say, "Oh, I don't like going to class." A lot of people, I hate going to class. Every day you go, you're it's about fighting. It's about being attacked. It's about you know and you have to deal with that on a daily basis, and that's what sharpens, you see,
Hmm.
the blade. That's sharpening your spirit. And the one thing I wanted to say about with you, so yeah, the comment you made, uh nobody's born aggressive. Okay, nobody's born aggressive or non-aggressive, right? um you know we all have propensity to be either, right? It's your upbringing and how you're brought up and raised. And this is the thing that we have to understand also, right? Um, you come from a loving home. You were raised in a particular way. Your desire, you have empathy, and you care for other people, and you're concerned about their feelings. you know yes, you can say some kind of neurosis, like sociopathic behavior, psychotic, whatever. Yeah, maybe that's some kind of a brain disorder. They're born with maybe those things, and they have some genetic disorder. But other than that, right, uh, it's the upbringing. So a lot of the people that are aggressive, right, and that want to do those things, hurt other people, they are filled with that pain, and their relief is by making others suffer and feel the pain like they are feeling. Then somehow it relieves them. When you with you don't have that. So when you get other people, somebody else upset, that hurts you.
Right.
Right? When somebody else is upset, that hurts you. Right? So if you hurt somebody, that hurts you. Right? So it's the difference of uh, of having love, or having hatred, or having pain inside, and uh, and this is but through the martial arts training, and that's another very important thing, and that's what it should be done. Okay, but it's not. But in the simplest way, martial arts, then in any school, the people who are too timid and non-aggressive, it can make them little more assertive. People who are highly aggressive, it's a way to let out their aggression and find some clarity and stability. So in that way, that it's good. Whether the instructor or teacher of the school, they know what they're doing or not, just by the the act itself is therapeutic and it helps people. Um,
Absolutely.
but, but when you know this, then now it can be a powerful means of helping people, identifying people, and how to, direct them and guide them. And that's our whole goal, right? You identify people who are aggressive, very ego, centric, and the goal is to humble them. You take the timid, weak, shy, introvert, and you make them, be more confident, more extroverted, and a little more aggressive. So, it's yeah. So that's
Yeah, I mean, I had to, the training, I had to lose many times before I won. I learned through the losses and going against people more experienced than me. And it wasn't until I think uh probably 4 years into my training that I, won my first gold medal in a
yeah,
tournament. I've got bronzes and silvers,
yeah,
whatever, but
yeah,
my first gold medal. And I remember, and I wanted to get your perspective on this. And I know we've had a conversation about this. People talk about the power of visualization, right? But usually they talk about it in the context of visualizing victory, visualizing a positive outcome. Well, the first tournament I won was a grappling tournament, heavyweight division.
yeah,
I visualized myself losing every single match before I went in.
yeah.
I visualized the worst outcome, and it was my way of. It was almost like I was like, tr- uh, I was again accepting the worst outcome. I was accepting
Yeah,
death, but I wasn't thinking
yeah,
about it in those terms. It was more of a
yeah,
the best way I can figure out how to calm my nerves was to
yeah,
visualize the worst
yeah,
outcome.
yeah,
And then, but once I got in there, obviously the opposite happened.
yeah,
And I was able to go through every match in that way, but it was
yeah,
just a very strange way of
yeah.
approaching it that I've never heard anyone talk about. No motivational speaker talks about visualizing the most horrible thing,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
yeah. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, so let's put that into context, right? When you're saying that you visualize losing, it's not saying that you're wanting to lose.
Correct.
See, so the idea of accepting losing or accepting death, when you say accepting death, doesn't mean you want to die. It's exactly the opposite. That's the last thing. That's the worst consequence, right? That's the thing you want the least to happen. So you accepted that. And remember, right, the it is our ability to deal with pressure, stress that defines what a winner or a high performer than in another and loser or uh, non-performer, whatever you call it, low performer. You know, it's the way we deal with that, right? Uh, so there are people that can deal and handle high levels of pressure and stress, and there are people that can't deal with stress at all, right? So one of the ways is is for the people who can't handle that stress, because in fact stress, pressure are not negative things. Okay, death, pain, suffering, these are not things that are avoidable, right? That is part of living, right? Losing is not, uh, you can't never lose, right? Like you cannot not die. So if your goal is I'm never going to lose, you're going to lose. And it's unrealistic and it's unachievable, right? So the goal is not to do those kinds of things. You know, so that's why you accept the worst case scenario, then that calms you. When it calms you, you're able to think clearly. And human beings, our greatest weapon, tool, is our intellect, our rational thinking. So if we're unable to use that, then it's like, um, putting a muzzle on a dog, right? Um, they can't do anything. And, uh, you know, so uh, just being highly aggressive or just keep being motivated to succeed and win, uh, doesn't do it. Surely everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to succeed. It is controlling the negative emotions, the negative feelings, right? That's more important, and that is actually what we don't teach. Parents don't teach it. Teachers in schools don't teach it. Mentors don't teach it. Nobody teaches it. How do you deal with negative emotion? How do you deal with losing? How do you deal with heartbreak? How do you deal with failure? You know, uh, we ignore it. We ignore it, and especially and that's one way, right? For men is to not deal with it, to suck it up, to well, that's one way. There are many ways. That's one way, right? Um, but um, there are better ways that has to be dealt with, because if you suppress those things, you see, the subconscious, we never forget. It always stays. It doesn't go away. That's the problem. We don't actually forget anything. It's always with us. So if you don't deal with it and process it and work it through, then it gets buried in the subconscious. And as you know, I mentioned this, but that's what controls you.
Hmm.
So how do you deal with controlling the subconscious? You don't want to bury negative things. So you have to deal and process those things. But in doing it, it's not pleasant. So once again, now, if the goal is to be happy all the time and and to pleasure yourself all the time, then see, that's the last thing you want to do.
You're also not dealing in reality because
No,
the life is not like that, and in especially you're an expert in helping parents raise their children and work with their children, develop them. And the mistake any parent can make is deny their child the opportunity to deal with adversity, to deal with suffering, to deal with negativity, because all of that is going to make them more resilient if they overcome it. They're going to develop discipline. And so it's not just about being positive with the child. It's also you know putting them or giving them the opportunity to be in situations where they have to problem solve and overcome. So it's not the absence of pressure, it's presence of pressure, but it's done in a safe, loving environment, in a family, or in your case, it's done in a studio.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Um, uh, there's so many things here, that we can talk about, but I want to just, stay in this context that we're talking about. Uh, yeah. So ultimately, the most important thing is dealing and overcoming fear, right? Fear and unpleasantness, things that are not pleasant. Um, and uh, you cannot expect to be in a match. You and I, we've had the Komtugi, the weapon fighting matches, yeah, many times, right? You cannot engage thinking, you're not going to get hit. You're going to get hit. Um, and while you're engaging in the attack, if you're worried about getting hit, you can't attack fully. So you can't commit to the attack because you're worried about getting hit. So you're neither there or here nor here. And this is it. And what is the one thing that people get yelled at and chewed out by me about, right? Is that, right? You have to commit. And how can you commit? You can't worry about getting hit. You can't worry about getting hit for the thousandth time. You can't worry that, yes, you've been struck in the hand and your glove, through the glove, and your hand's killing you. You got to hit again, and you got to commit. So, um, of course, all that training, we do it with like $1,000 of armor around you. So, I mean, it's not going to seriously damage you. And you're absolutely right. It's in that loving, safe environment. Little by little, we're teaching them how to be resilient. Um, then, of course, as you do that, the other important thing that oftentimes we forget to do, right, is that you need constantly a person, they have to be groomed. So it's not letting something grow wild, okay, untamed. And that's like the ego. So uh, martial art, whether you like it or not, right? If you are an introvert, weak, non-aggressive person, and you start training, you're going to get stronger. You're going to become more confident. You're going to get more puffed up, all right? And how you deal with things and so forth. So a good teacher, or what needs to happen, should know that's when they need to be humbled before they get out of control. So this constant thing of, so you have to give them challenges, resistance, problems that are sometimes they can't, it's over their ability. Okay? But watch them, monitor them, right? You can't protect them from that. So they get a little confident, and their confidence, they gain enthusiasm, right? And they want to do this, they want to do that. I mean, I'm sure you're raising a child. I mean, they do one thing, and they want to, and then you go, and the one method is to stop them, right? Prevent them, because you don't want them getting hurt, right? And what should happen is, yes, let them do it. Let them do it, okay? And create a place where they can do it and can't get too seriously hurt. So, don't run, but they want to run. Okay, let them run. Then what happens when they run too fast or whatever? Bam, they fall, get hurt. Then
Right.
you pick them back up. Pick them back up and go, hey,
They're running at home or in the yard, not on the street. There's a difference.
you and they learn. They learn what's important is that lesson. What's that lesson? Empirical learning. The best learning is for them to know, to learn by themselves, by their choice. Oh yeah, I chose to do that, and you know, that's I can't do it, right? So when they fail there, that's when you have to be there to coach them, to make corrections, to give them guidance, and then support them to try again or modify the task or the goal, reduce it a little bit, whatever, and have them try again right away. That is so important to do. Just like falling off a bike. If you fall off a bike, when you're teaching a person how to ride a bike, a kid how to ride a bike, they fall off and you end it there, they'll never get back on again. Okay. Soon as they fall, scrape their, whatever, and you got to get back on. Same thing when we do fighting. Same, matching, whatever. They lose, they get a little hurt, get them right back in there. Right. So it's a natural way of humbling them, checking them, and then uh, so the idea also, this is what happens, right? And a lot of parents and a lot of people think this is a way to develop confidence or self-esteem, right? They do something, they're good at it, so they continue just doing the good things they're good at, and you reward them. There is no, so they do a particular thing, and you just make them do that one thing, right? And they know they're good at it, so they do it, right? The problem is that they develop an ego, confidence that's false. They're only good at that one thing. But somehow they become confident, boisterous, opinionated on all things. And this is
We see that with adults right now.
you see that with adults, and you see that with like celebrities, or
Right.
people. Look, all they do is acting or singing. They have no other talent. You know, how can they give advice on things that they have no clue about? Thomas Sowell, I don't know if you know him.
No, sir.
Great intellect, great thinker. I don't know all his accolades. I mean, incredible. This gentleman, he's an African American, and and he makes a comment about the problem of intellectuals. You know, intellectuals who sit around and making all the policies and making all the rules, and because they have this uh, uh, feeling of superiority that they know because that they're intellectuals. But the problem is that they live in a bubble, the bubble of the academia, that bubble. They are not in touch with reality. So, although their policies and their things that they come up with are intellectually, rationally sound, they're not applicable. So
Mhm.
they fail. So they fail. So um, uh, see, I take it to the other extreme. What I'm saying is, just because somebody knows subject in whatever of very expert, but have no experience. So it's the same thing in martial arts, right? You're an expert in weapon fighting or spar fighting or whatever it is, but you never engaged in fighting, right? You're an expert in martial arts by watching movies, martial art movies, right? You're an expert. You know every move. You've watched every person, every fight. You know it, but you never done it, right? Can you comment? You
Sure, they can
can.
comment.
You can comment, but you see, is it applicable? You see,
Mhm.
this is the problem. This is the problem.
Yeah, well, the other thing, that, we can't discount it, and it's not I don't think we've talked about it yet, but I've come to appreciate it more and more, especially as in business, I grow a team, and we have different personalities, and I see people on our team and even clients of ours that did kinda grow up in a marshmallow fortress,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and, uh, and, the in the training that we did, the negative feedback, it was just wasn't positive reinforcement all the time, it was more negative reinforcement, and it's not pleasant, it doesn't feel good, you don't like it, you don't wanna be in that
yeah,
happening all the time, but what
yeah,
it did is it made me and certainly others
yeah,
more resilient
yeah,
to feedback.
yeah,
When people give you feedback and they're not the best at giving you
yeah,
feedback and they're
yeah,
more like
yeah,
emotional when they give you feedback,
yeah,
well, everyone's tendency is to respond emotionally if somebody's
yeah,
critical to you because they're
yeah,
emotional.
yeah,
But what that gave me the ability to do now is, most of my business partners, they're very good at giving feedback in a way that's not going to be offensive, but
yeah, yeah,
not everybody's
yeah,
not like that.
yeah, yeah,
And so how can you what it gave me the ability to do is to see the truth in what people are sharing,
yeah,
even if they are being mean or if they're
yeah,
being
yeah,
emotional or not in doing it in the best way. it allowed me to separate. Okay, this is, I know it's emotional. I know I'm triggered, but then what is the what can I
Yeah.
take away from this?
Oh man,
And
that's good.
most people don't have that ability to separate
Yeah.
the feedback from the emotion,
Yeah. Yeah.
and training,
Yeah.
with you certainly did that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm good at negative feedback. Yeah, I'm good at telling the truth, and sometimes but embellished. But uh, you know, if you understand martial arts, that's what martial art is. All that is negative feedback. No, you fight, you do something wrong, boom, it's negative feedback. The opponent, their only job is to identify your vulnerability, your weakness, and expose it. That's the nature of martial arts. So, what am I saying? Everyone should be training in martial arts. You, for your team or you people you work with, put them with gloved up and put them into fighting, in sparring. Have them do it, all armored up, and then explain, right?
Mhm.
Okay, when you get hit once, you never want to get hit again. you know, that's the biggest lesson, right? You never get hit. You just punch away, and you think and then now you think you eh, have power and you have ability. That's false.
But it's also efficient. If you think of martial art where it comes from, war, uh, you're taking feedback, mostly negative, really fast, hard and fast, even from people who are there in the trenches with you, side by side. They're not thinking about how they should give you feedback. They're giving you direct, brutal feedback
Yeah,
because they need you to
yeah,
move or
yeah,
do respond as quickly as
yeah,
possible.
yeah,
And that's, getting that, being able to take that feedback quickly, regardless of like, there's so much around being offended as to how
yeah,
somebody talked
yeah,
to you.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
let's just take the feedback. And granted, if they're your spouse or you have a close relationship, you
yeah,
can work on how that
yeah,
communication happens.
yeah,
But you're going to be more efficient in fighting.
yeah,
You're going to
yeah,
be more efficient in business and in life
yeah,
if you can take the feedback
yeah,
as quickly as however it comes,
yeah,
and respond, and not get caught up in the emotion of it.
yeah. I mean, we're this is another whole big
Yeah.
subject, and maybe we'll discuss it in the
I mean, the
next
next one.
next one. But it's about the idea of self-esteem, right? And it's horrible what's happening in the world today, right? Not to be offensive, not to hurt people's feelings. Feelings actually have nothing to do with reality. What you like don't change anything. Okay. um, and feelings, because you think you feel you deserve something, or that you feel you're better, doesn't mean anything. That's not reality. Your feelings actually mean nothing. Your feeling is something that you have to deal with, not what other people should be dealing with. Okay.
Right.
um, and so uh, you know and uh, building, and that's what the problem of today, right? As you said, martial art, the entire idea actually is efficiency, right? How to do the most with the least. That's actually the goal of everything. Okay. As Taejoon Lee, my father has said, right? If you if you make something from something, it's nothing. If you make something from nothing, that's something. In his very uh, uh, how do you say, succinct, precise use of the English language. But that means everything, what he said.
Yeah.
And so, um, and and how do we better? Through criticism. What we can't handle is criticism. And if your feeling is hurt, that's your problem. And that's why people continue to attack, because your feelings hurt.
Mm.
Kids are brutal. When you're in school, You think you're going to stop this by you not dealing with it, whatever, or you're going to, no, yeah. You tell them something about the, I have a whole thing about my name, right? My name is Taejoon TJ. When I was in all white school, when I came here first time, when I was a kid, I changed my name 2 3 times because that's what kids do. They take something that is not the norm, that sticks out, and they pick on it, right? And in fact, that is the way naturally it actually makes that person stronger if they are taught and given advice to overcome, resist, and prevail. Okay, but if you coddle them, if you then all you've done is you scarred them for life, and because the reality when they grow up, that's all that's going to be doing. And as I say to parents all the time, you are raising bait, food for the sharks, and that's not correct. We have to grow thick skin. We have to be able to verbally, physically altercating and hurting. That's assault. So yeah, that's against the law. But verbally, that is part of also learning and growing a thick skin. And actually, how well you're going to succeed will determine how thick your skin is, how you're able to deal with harsh criticism, right? It is stated that fools uh, can't accept rebuke. Only wise. He said, "Don't criticize. Give criticism to the wise, and they'll thank you." Right? Give criticism to a fool, you'll be rebuked. You'll be hated.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Bible verse that I'm not getting all complete, but you understand the context.
Yep, yep. I get the
You
point.
know, those are fools, and you might make them feel good at the moment, but I'm telling you, the leaders of the world, okay, people who are in prominent positions, are not those. Are not those. So if you want to pacify and appease the masses, then you want to go ahead and have people be sensitive to their feelings and deal with those issues. While the sharks, which are few, just leisurely swim and bite away at their will. See, so uh, this is a horrible thing what's happening right now, right? And it's another way to confuse and distort reality, because that's not reality. That's not reality, right? You know, if you know business, it's war.
Yep.
Business is
It's
war.
one of
Okay.
my business mentors. At every meeting, he always ends it with, "Just remember, they're firing live bullets out there." And it's a metaphor, but he's talking about business. It's like your competition, your market does not care about your well-being or how much money you make. They care about what's in it for them,
Yeah.
and you'll do well if you are able to, you know, serve them. And as soon as
Yeah.
you're not, you're dispensable. And
Yeah.
so it's exactly that. You have to be resilient. You have to be able to adapt. You have to problem solve.
Absolutely.
You can't be emotional. You can't, so constantly sharpening the sword. You can be an employee, and nothing wrong with being an employee, but you can be an employee and basically kind of sit on the skills that you have and have a cushy job and not really develop yourself very much and be okay. In business, you have to constantly be developing, educating yourself, sharpening the sword, becoming more resilient, because things only get tougher as you grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think this goes back, everything you're talking about
Yeah.
thickening the skin
Yeah.
is just our way as human beings of sharpening our sword. and
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
as soon as
So
we become dull, we're useless.
absolutely. So
Would you
think
say?
about, that idea, right? But applied. I mean, it's so evident in your martial arts training, right? the part of inspiring part of is that you have to be able to take the hit, you know. So if you can't take the hit, and any little touch, and you go down, huh? uh, you can't win. Part of being succeeding, and part of winning in martial arts, in fighting, is also has to do with how well you can take the hit. And to think that nothing will hit you, that nobody will hit you, see, that's the craziness,
Hmm.
right? That's delusional, complete delusion. uh, you know, you can't hit me. I say jokingly, when I was in school, right, when I was a younger kid, and kids would say, because I'm Asian, I'm the only Asian, and they talk about Bruce Lee. My name's Lee. And they think I'm related to Bruce Lee, and I didn't even know who Bruce was, because in Asia he was not popular. So anyway, right, they would say before you fight, say, okay, okay, no kicking, right? It's a fight. So when they say no kicking, what do you? Then you first thing you kick them. They go, okay, we fight, but no hitting the face. So what's the first thing? Boom! You punch them in the face, in the nose. That's fighting. Eh, That's not cheating. That's fighting. It's not playing. It's fighting. This is in the streets. It's fighting. It's not in an arena. It's not in a ring. It's reality. They have rules. When you're out there and a person wants to hurt you, there are no rules. There are no rules, right? So making those things up and saying, okay, you can only do this, you can only do that. No, no. So lastly, I want to go ahead and leave with this comment, right? Yes, it's competition. Yes, it's war. Yes, okay. And the difference that I change, that in our martial arts training and how we view competition, is, in my opinion, very different, because it is not self-grandizement. It is not for my personal glory. The reason why we compete is so that I can be at my strongest, to push and motivate others to be better. Okay? That is thinking in a unified perspective, not self, but the group. So, as a group, when you excel and do better, and you give and you become the greater resistance to another person, then you're giving them, you're strengthening them, because you are now the bigger problem that they must find a solution to overcome, and then vice versa, etc. And this is how we push society forward. This is how competition, this is how capitalism, this is how, in the, uh, not that I agree, but the Darwinian evolution of survival of the fittest, that's the whole concept, right? How we push ourselves to grow and better each generation, right? But it's the perception. Yes, of course you're doing it for yourself, right? But in you trying to be at your best, you're also promoting, you're challenging others to outdo you. So, to wanting to do best in behest everybody else, everybody perish and only you thrive. See, that is an ill thinking, a sick mind. And that is what happens when somebody becomes too self centered, too egotistical. You see? So, what I'm saying is they need to understand the bigger picture. The bigger picture is, although they are doing for themselves, they are part of humanity. And they cannot deny that. They cannot escape that. So we have a responsibility not only to ourselves, but to our humanity, our human community. So it's this constant, you know, uh, check reality check, constant idea, and checking to make sure that people do not go astray and keep morally uh, sound, and uh, and fine tune their perception is important. This is why we need good leaders, good mentors, good parents, good teachers. It's essential.
Well said, sir. Well, I think that that concludes our first ever episode of Live by the Sword. And so I look forward to the next one. I appreciate you, sir. I appreciate everything you've done for me and the mentorship. And it's gone a long way, probably more than you'll ever know. And in many lives of your students, it's gone farther than you'll ever know because they've probably moved on, but they've taken the lessons, and that's what I hope for however long this podcast goes, that everyone gets a little bit of even just a sliver of the value I've gotten in training Hwa Rang Do and your mentorship.
Thank you, Fernie, and you're definitely, one of my best students, and you've done incredible things, amazing things, and you've also helped me out, helped me tremendously, and and this is how we grow together as a community, as a community of human beings, and we need to always help each other and be there for each other. Um, we all die, and I am very proud and happy, and I thank God that I'm blessed with uh, with living out my life with you together.
All right. Likewise, sir. All right.
Okay, hold on. Take care. Bye, everybody, and we'll see you
Bye.
in the next podcast.